Hello everyone, my name is Herman Caballeros. Today I will be discussing the benefits of using the integrative model to analyze and study the disparities found within marginalized groups. Previous research emphasized the differences between minority and majority groups, highlighting the adversities and limitations that the disadvantaged groups face and the effects this has on attitudes, behaviors, cognition, and the overall development of an individual. According to Spencer and colleagues, this model was created to amalgamate the traditional and contemporary approaches used to track life trajectory outcomes, especially for specific groups. In this case, we're speaking about minority groups. So the integrative model seeks to, take into account the different variables that go into or affect developmental trajectories or development in general. And these include variables that a lot of the scope of research, previous research, did not necessarily pay close attention to. Um, and the integrative model was actually created to combat that way of doing research or that way of thinking. Um, so, for the most part, the notion that minority groups are lacking in some area of development is pre-integrative model, um, and what a lot of research tends to highlight or focus on are the various differences between groups, and not within groups. So they're emphasizing what happens when children aren't born into affluent families, when they aren't born into the ability to have and utilize resources, and that in a sense is what the integrative model is trying to combat. What they're saying is, or what the integrative model and the people who use it, the researchers who use it, are insisting is that this is a more beneficial approach to highlight how the circumstances of minority groups make them more resilient as opposed to making them deficient in certain areas. So, as I alluded to previously, the reason that the integrative model was created was essentially as a corrective measure. Previous theories had some trouble encompassing the many dynamics that go into explaining how development is affected by one's circumstances, and even more trouble explaining how those challenges that people face at each level of their lives create inadequacies. Especially when it comes to the social dynamic of a person or group. This theory is very reminiscent of Yuri Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory, um, which, like the integrative model, really places emphasis on context-specific circumstances and situations in research. Uh, and the theory surmises that a person's environment is comprised of various systems that, permeate or penetrate all areas of a person's life. And that these systems describe different levels of interconnectivity between themselves and the contexts and the times that they exist in. In a sense, this is it kind of expresses how a person's interactions with the environment shapes how they develop, and also promotes the acknowledgement of that connection between the person, place, and time, and how that and what that does to a person's development, and the developmental trajectory. Perez, Brenner, and their colleagues discussed the prevalence of adaptive culture and the place it has in research. Right, so this in this case, we're talking about marginalized groups, and I think the integrative model, it kind of is tailored to the this minority group or marginalized groups that we're speaking about now. And according to research, some African Americans, Hispanic, Latinx, South Asian, and other minority group children face issues that derive from eras way before they existed. Um, so things like racism, they also experience differences in how they're perceived or treated by the dominant or the mainstream culture, which probably consists of things like social exclusion. Excuse me. They also deal with issues at home or at school or in their communities, and they have limited social resources. Some live in poverty and form these insecure attachments due to lack of safety and poor communal engagement, which affects how they now develop, how they engage with their environment. Um, so adaptive culture, in a sense, is the group's ability to conform to the dynamics of the more culturally dominant group, um, while still excuse me, not remaining, but while still promoting, excuse me, um, sustainability and trying to keep like a moderate quality of life. So still have a cultural identity, but in that cultural identity, still understand what it means to exist in the cultural context where they are the minority. So some of the researchers that advocate for the integrative model note that although there are several obvious drawbacks to living under these circumstances, circumstances such as having to deal with racism, prejudices, social economic discriminations, segregation, and the like, many of the children in these who live in these circumstances display signs of adapting and utilizing the affordances in their environments. And what the authors note, or the researchers note, is that this serves kind of as a compensation for not having the economic resources that their more affluent counterparts have. To conclude, I want to reiterate some of the instances where the integrative model was used or has been used effectively to examine the intercultural differences and some of the disparities that we see in research. Tatum, 1987, finds that African Americans tend to find ways to connect more often, to come together as a means of protection. And this protection is usually from the majority group, being that they are the minority. And this creates a sense of security and also the ability for them to express themselves, express their cultural beliefs, express their cultural values, establish a sense of belonging, which is one of the most important things um, that we see in this integrative model. And as I mentioned, I think a few slides prior, this is a way for them to compensate, right? Or I think last slide, this is a way for them to compensate for not having the resources that they need. So they, African Americans specifically, but other marginalized and minority groups also, they tend to come together so that they can share the resources. They can keep the resources within their group and also share them when needed, or as needed, rather. So some researchers surmise that the people in this group learn to kind of navigate in the minority group, excuse me, learn to navigate what it means to be marginalized. They start to understand and remain cognizant of how they're perceived by the culturally dominant group. Um, and lastly, they learn to address the internal issues that exist within their own cultures um, in order to maintain their cultural identities and manage their contextual experiences, despite being in what they would call, you know, marginalized group. So ultimately, what the integrative model does is it it focuses on not just what these groups don't get or aren't afforded because they are in the situations they're in, the circumstances they're in, but highlights, focuses, and emphasizes the things that they gain from being in this type of environment, these types of environments, and this is why the integrative model has been so effective over the years. The following are a list of references used to develop this presentation.